The red alert klaxon pierced through the calm of the UES Thunderchild's bridge. Captain Emma Wilson sat up straight in her command chair, her coffee cup forgotten on the armrest. The massive view screen in front of her showed nothing but the peaceful darkness of space, dotted with distant stars. "Report," she ordered, her voice steady despite the sudden tension. Lieutenant John Rogers looked up from his console, his face pale under the flashing red lights. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal from New Eden Colony. They're under attack." Emma's grip tightened on her chair. New Eden was one of Earth's first outer colony attempts, home to over 10,000 civilians. "Show me." The view screen flickered to life with a transmission. The colony's governor appeared, his face covered in sweat and dust. Behind him, people ran in panic as strange purple beams cut through buildings like paper. "This is Governor Clark of New Eden. We're under attack by unknown vessels. They just appeared out of nowhere. Our defense is air." A massive explosion rocked the transmission. "Please, anyone who can hear this, help us." Emma turned to her helm officer. "How long to reach New Eden at maximum speed?" 20 minutes at emergency thrust, Captain." "Do it." She opened a ship-wide channel. "All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill." The Thunderchild's engines roared to life. At nearly a mile long, the warship was humanity's most advanced vessel, though it had never seen real combat. Until today, Emma thought grimly. As they approached New Eden, Science Officer Daniel Foster's console lit up with readings. "Captain, I'm detecting 15 unknown vessels in orbit around the colony. Their technology, it's like nothing we've ever seen." Before Emma could respond, a new signal cut through their communications. The bridge crew froze as a tall, reptilian alien appeared on screen. Its scales shimmered with an iridescent purple sheen, and its 4 eyes blinked in an unsettling pattern. "Attention, primitive vessel." The alien spoke in perfect English, making everyone on the bridge exchange worried glances. "I am High Commander Zextor of the Galactic Council Enforcement Fleet. You are in violation of Council Directive 7249. Unauthorized sentient development in controlled space." Emma stood from her chair, her jaw set firmly. "This is Captain Emma Wilson of the UES Thunderchild. You are attacking a peaceful human colony without provocation. Cease your assault immediately." The alien made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Your species was not authorized to develop space travel or establish colonies. You will submit to species management protocols within 48 standard hours or face extinction. This is your only warning." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. "Captain," Chief Engineer Susan Martinez called from her station, "their weapons are unlike anything we've seen. Standard shields might not hold against them." Emma nodded slowly, her mind racing through options. "What about the experimental quantum shields you've been working on?" "They're untested in combat." "But," Martinez paused, fingers flying over her console, "they might give us an edge. Their energy signatures are completely different from known weapons." The Thunderchild approached the colony, and the true scale of destruction became clear. Several of New Eden's major cities were burning, their defensive shields having failed completely against the alien weapons. "All hands." Emma's voice rang through the ship. "This is your captain speaking. In a few minutes, we will engage an enemy that believes humanity has no right to exist among the stars. They expect us to surrender, to give up everything we've built and bow to their authority." She paused, watching as the alien ships began to turn toward them. "They're about to learn that humanity doesn't bow to bullies, no matter how advanced they think they are." The bridge crew straightened in their seats, hands steady on their controls. "Tactical, bring all weapons online. Engineering, route emergency power to the quantum shields. Communications, send a message to Earth Command. Let them know." Emma sat back in her chair, her eyes fixed on the approaching alien fleet. "Let them know that humanity is at war." The Thunderchild's engines hummed with power as it moved to protect what remained of the colony. On the view screen, purple energy began to gather around the alien ship's weapon ports. The first shots were about to be fired in a war that would change the galaxy forever. Lieutenant John Rogers hadn't slept in 24 hours. He sat in the Thunderchild's intelligence center, surrounded by holographic displays showing data about their new enemy. Each new piece of information made his stomach sink lower. "Computer, show me the Council's conquest history again," he said, rubbing his tired eyes. The display changed, showing a list of fallen civilizations. 47 species had already fallen to the Council's species management protocols. Some had been spacefaring races with centuries of advancement. All of them were now serving as little more than slaves to the Council. The ship shuddered as another blast hit their shields. They had retreated to the dark side of New Eden's moon, buying time to understand their enemy. Chief Engineer Susan Martinez's voice came through his comm. "John, I need you in engineering. Now." He found her standing next to the quantum shield generator, her hands covered in thermal grease. Around them, engineering crews worked frantically to keep the ship's systems running. "Look at this." She pointed to a display showing the shield's energy patterns. "Every time their weapons hit us, our quantum shields don't just block the energy. They learn from it. They're actually getting stronger." John's eyes widened. "Can we use that?" "Maybe. But we need more time." Susan wiped her hands on a rag. "The Council ships keep using the same attack patterns. They've never had to change their tactics before. No one's ever survived this long against them." The ship's intercom crackled. "All senior officers to the bridge." Captain Wilson's voice was tight with tension. On the bridge, the main screen showed Earth's unified response to the crisis. Every nation had joined forces, pooling their military resources, but they had only 24 hours left before the Council's deadline. "Status report," Captain Wilson demanded as John and Susan took their stations. "The good news is their weapons aren't as effective as they first appeared," Susan reported. "The quantum shields are adapting. The bad news is we're the only ship with this technology." "What about their defenses?" Wilson asked. John brought up his findings. "They rely on overwhelming force. Their ships are powerful, but rigid. They fight the same way every time because it's always worked before. Like a bully who's never been punched back." Robert Hayes, the weapons commander, added from his station. The tactical display suddenly lit up with new contacts. 5 more Council ships had arrived, larger than the others. "Captain," the communications officer called out, "we're being hailed." The screen showed High Commander Zextor again, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood a taller alien with black scales and 6 eyes. "Humans," the new alien spoke, its voice deeper than Zextor's. "I am Supreme War Master Krell of the Eternal Dominion. Your resistance is unusual. Submit now, and we will be merciful. Continue to resist, and we will make an example of your species." Captain Wilson stood, her face calm. "You attacked our colony without warning. You demand we surrender our freedom just because we didn't ask your permission to exist. Where I come from, we have a response to bullies like you." She signaled to cut the transmission. "Options?" she asked her crew. Susan spoke up first. "The quantum shields are our advantage. They've never seen anything like them. But we need to last long enough to matter." "Their tactics are predictable," John added. "They fight like they've got a rulebook they never deviate from. We don't have to follow their rules." Robert Hayes grinned. "They've never fought humans before. We wrote the book on fighting dirty when we have to." Captain Wilson nodded slowly. "Then let's show them why that was a mistake." "Susan, how long to get the quantum shields to full power?" 2 hours, maybe 3. "They won't give us that long," John warned. "Then we'll have to take it." Wilson turned to her helm officer. "Plot a course through the asteroid belt. Let's see how well their perfect formations handle some obstacles." The Thunderchild's engines hummed to life. On the screen, the massive Council ships moved to intercept them, their purple weapons charging. They expect us to either surrender or die fighting, Wilson said to her crew. Instead, we're going to teach them something about humanity. We don't just fight to win. We fight to survive. And that makes us more dangerous than anything they've faced before. As the Thunderchild accelerated toward the asteroid belt, John watched the enemy ships following their predictable pursuit pattern. For the first time since the crisis began, he felt a glimmer of hope. Sometimes, he thought, the most dangerous enemy isn't the strongest one. It's the one with nothing left to lose. The Eternal Dominion was massive. Through the Thunderchild's view screen, Commander Robert Hayes watched the enemy flagship approach. It was 5 times larger than their ship, its black hull gleaming with purple energy lines. Their weapons are powering up, he reported, checking his tactical display. Main cannon is twice the size of our whole ship. Captain Wilson leaned forward in her chair. Analysis. They're not even trying to hide their power readings, Robert said. They want us to see how strong they are. It's like they're showing off. First Officer Lisa Chen spoke up from her station. That's it. All eyes turned to her. They're not just showing off. They're stuck in their ways, like a boxer who's never lost a fight. They don't know how to change their style. The Thunderchild shook as debris from the asteroid belt bounced off their shields. They had been playing hide-and-seek with the Council fleet for an hour, using the giant rocks as cover. Lissa might be right. Susan Martinez called from engineering. Every time they fire, it's the same pattern. Maximum power, straight ahead. They've never needed to be clever. Captain Wilson smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. Then let's teach them something new. Lisa, what's your thinking? Lisa pulled up a tactical display. Back on Earth, I studied old naval battles. The Spanish Armada was supposed to be invincible too, but smaller English ships used the weather and quick movements to beat them. We can do the same thing here. In space, Robert asked. Look at them. Lisa pointed to the screen. Their big ships can't turn quickly. They're built for power, not speed. And see how they keep their formation perfect, no matter what. They're fighting like it's a parade. Susan's voice came through the comm again, excited. Captain, I've been studying their shield readings. They're using standard energy barriers. Our quantum shields are different. They learn and adapt. That's why we're still alive. The ship rocked again as a blast from the Eternal Dominion vaporized a nearby asteroid. They're trying to clear the field, Robert reported. Remove our cover. Captain Wilson stood up. Lisa, take over tactical planning. What's your strategy? Lisa's fingers flew over her console. We use their size against them. Quick hits never stay still. They want a big target to shoot at. Let's give them lots of little ones instead. Explain, Wilson ordered. Susan, can we use the quantum shields to make fake sensor readings? Make it look like there's more than one of us. In engineering, Susan grinned. Ghost images. Yeah, we can do that. The shields can bend energy around us, create false returns on their sensors. Do it, Wilson commanded. Lisa, what else? We hit them where they're not looking. Their weapons are all focused forward. Their sides and rear have lighter armor. They never expect anyone to get that close. Robert checked his weapons. Our new rail guns might work better than energy weapons, physical projectiles. Bet they haven't seen those in a while. The tactical display lit up with warnings. The Eternal Dominion was charging its main weapon. Everyone clear on the plan? Wilson asked. We're going to fight like Earth ships from centuries ago. Hit and run. Use terrain. Be unpredictable. The crew nodded. On the screen, purple energy gathered at the front of the enemy flagship. Susan, start those ghost images. Make them think we're everywhere. Robert, load the rail guns. Lisa, plot us a course right through their formation. Get us in close where their big guns can't track us. The Thunderchild's engines powered up. Around them, sensor ghosts appeared, making it look like a dozen Earth ships were hiding in the asteroid field. They're firing, Robert called out. The Eternal Dominion's main cannon lit up space with purple fire, but it hit nothing. The Thunderchild was already moving, diving between asteroids, its ghost images confusing the enemy targeting systems. "They're breaking formation," Lisa reported with satisfaction. "They've never had to chase a target before. Look, they're getting in each other's way." Captain Wilson watched as the mighty Council fleet, faced with an enemy that wouldn't stand still and fight properly, began to show signs of confusion. "Send a message to Earth," she ordered. "Tell them to hold position. The Thunderchild is going to show the galaxy that sometimes the smallest dog in the fight can still win." As they dove toward the enemy fleet, Wilson remembered an old saying, "Pride comes before a fall." The Council was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Tactical Officer Brian Murphy watched his screen as the Eternal Dominion's escort fleet spread out in a perfect V formation. Too perfect, he thought. The Council ships moved like they were in a parade, not a battle. "Their formation has gaps," he reported to Captain Wilson. "Big ones. They're so focused on keeping their distances exact, they're leaving blind spots." The Thunderchild hid behind a massive asteroid, its engines quiet. Around them, the ghost images created by their quantum shields made it look like Earth ships were everywhere in the veldt. "Atlas, what do you see?" Wilson asked. The ship's AI responded in its calm voice. "Analysis complete. Council ships show a 94% probability of following standard attack patterns. Their tactics have not changed in over 300 years of recorded battles." Brian smiled. That was exactly what they needed to know. "How many of our ghost images are they chasing?" Wilson asked. 3 Council destroyers are pursuing false signals to the north," Brian reported. 4 more are heading south. They're splitting up, just like we wanted. In engineering, Susan Martinez monitored the quantum shields. "Ghost images are stable, Captain. They're buying it completely. They think they're chasing a whole fleet." The massive form of the Eternal Dominion passed overhead, its purple energy weapons charging. The flagship was hunting for them, but looking in the wrong direction. "Now," Lisa Chen asked from her station. Wilson nodded. "Now, Brian, target their rear quadrant. Full spread of rail guns." The Thunderchild's new weapons were simple by Council standards, just metal projectiles fired at incredible speeds, but sometimes the old ways worked best. "Fire," Wilson ordered. The rail guns roared. Streaks of metal shot through space, too fast for the Council's energy shields to stop. The projectiles slammed into the Eternal Dominion's rear armor, causing the massive ship to shudder. "Direct hits," Brian called out. "Their rear shields are down 30%. "Move," Wilson commanded. The Thunderchild shot forward, then dove behind another asteroid before the Council ships could target them. "They're confused," Lisa reported with satisfaction. "Look at their formation. It's falling apart. They don't know which way to turn." Atlas spoke again. "Enemy ships are attempting to regroup. Their command structure requires direct orders for any change in tactics, calculating optimal attack vectors." The bridge crew watched as the Council fleet tried to reform their perfect V shape. But the asteroids made it impossible, and the ghost images kept drawing ships out of position. "Their flagship is targeting another ghost," Brian reported. "Firing main cannon. They hit nothing but rocks." Wilson allowed herself a small smile. They've never had to fight smart before. They don't know how. Suddenly, alarms blared. "Multiple ships incoming," Brian called out. "They're trying to box us in." "Susan, status of quantum shields." "Holding strong, Captain. Each hit makes them stronger. They're learning the enemy weapon patterns." The Thunderchild shook as a glancing blow struck them, but the quantum shields flared and absorbed the energy, growing stronger. "Atlas, calculate their blind spots," Wilson ordered. "Ryan, prepare another railgun spread. Lisa, get us in close, real close." "That close to their guns?" Lisa asked, but she was already plotting the course. They expect enemies to stay far away from their big weapons, Wilson explained. So we'll do the opposite, right up against their hull, where they can't bring their main guns to bear. The Thunderchild's engines fired. They dove through a gap in the asteroid field, straight toward the Eternal Dominion. Council ships fired at them, but their shots were aimed at where they thought the ship would be, not where it was going. Distance to target, Wilson asked. 2,000 meters, Brian reported. 1,500. Hold your fire until we're point blank, Wilson ordered. Make every shot count. The Eternal Dominion loomed huge in their view screen. At this distance, they could see the details of its black hull, the purple energy lines pulsing with power. They're trying to target us, Brian reported. But their weapons can't turn this far. We're too close. Fire everything, Wilson commanded. The railguns launched their deadly cargo. At this range, they couldn't miss. The projectiles tore into the flagship's hull, ripping through armor that had never been tested against such primitive weapons. Multiple hull breaches on their ship, Atlas reported. Their defense systems are not designed for this type of combat. As they shot past the flagship, Wilson saw Council ships scrambling to respond. But their perfect formations and rigid tactics were falling apart in the face of humanity's unconventional warfare. Battle report, she ordered. We've damaged their flagship, Brian said, his voice excited. And their fleet is scattered. Captain, I think this might actually work. The battle was far from over. But for the first time, the mighty Council fleet looked vulnerable. Sometimes, Wilson thought, the best way to beat a stronger enemy was to change the rules of the game. Hard left, Captain Wilson shouted as another purple beam cut through space where they had been seconds before. The Thunderchild responded instantly, sliding behind a spinning asteroid the size of a small city. Susan Martinez's voice crackled over the comm from engineering. Captain, you're not going to believe this. The quantum shields aren't just learning their weapon patterns anymore. They're starting to predict them. The bridge crew exchanged looks of surprise. They had been playing this deadly game of hide and seek for over an hour, and each minute taught them more about their enemy. Show me, Wilson ordered. A display lit up showing the shield patterns. Every time the Council ships fired, the quantum shields were ready a split second before the shot arrived. 3 Council destroyers destroyed, Brian Murphy reported from Tactical, trying to keep the excitement out of his voice. We're wearing them down. The Thunderchild shuddered as debris from another explosion bounced off their hull. One of the smaller Council ships had just tried to follow them through a tight gap between asteroids. It hadn't made it. They still don't understand, Lisa Chen said, shaking her head as she worked the navigation controls. They keep trying to use their big formation moves in an asteroid field. It's like watching a whale try to swim through a coral reef. Atlas, the ship's AI, spoke up. Council ship patterns suggest increasing frustration. They are attempting maneuvers outside their standard protocols, efficiency dropping by 47%. Wilson smiled grimly. They're getting angry. Good. Angry enemies make mistakes. Another massive purple beam from the Eternal Dominion vaporized a cluster of asteroids, trying to clear a firing lane. But the Thunderchild was already gone, diving deeper into the field. Susan, how are those ghost images holding up? Wilson asked. Better than ever, Captain. I've got them chasing shadows all over the belt. Their sensors can't tell which signals are real anymore. On the main screen, they watched as 2 Council cruisers crashed into each other trying to pursue one of the ghost images. Their perfect formation discipline was working against them. They didn't know how to handle chaos. Remember those old World War I submarine movies? Wilson asked suddenly. Captain. Lisa looked confused. How the subs would hide under thermal layers in the ocean, then strike when the enemy least expected it. Wilson pointed to a dense cluster of asteroids. We can do the same thing here. Lisa, take us in. Power to minimal. The Thunderchild slipped between the rocks, its engines barely running. They watched as 3 Council ships passed overhead, their sensors sweeping for targets. They're still thinking in 2 dimensions, Brian noticed. Just like those old sea captains, they're not looking up or down enough. At last, Wilson called. Calculate firing solution. Time it with that big asteroid's rotation. Computing, the AI responded. Solution ready. Firing window in 15 seconds. They waited in silence as a massive asteroid slowly rotated above them. The Council ships were still searching in the wrong place. Fire, Wilson ordered quietly. The rail guns launched their projectiles just as the asteroid completed its turn. The metal slugs used the rock's gravity to curve their path, coming at the Council ships from an impossible angle. Direct hits, Brian called out. 2 more enemy ships disabled. The quantum shields flared as return fire spattered around them, but the shots were hasty, uncoordinated. The Council fleet was starting to panic. They've never lost before, Lisa realized. They don't know how to handle it. The ship's comm crackled. Supreme War Master Krell's voice boomed through the bridge, but this time the calm superiority was gone from his tone. This is impossible, he roared. You are primitives. Your technology is inferior. Your tactics are chaos. Wilson signaled for broadcast. That's right, she said calmly. We're primitive, we're chaos, and we're winning. She cut the transmission. Status report, she ordered. 8 enemy ships destroyed or disabled, Brian reported. 3 more have withdrawn from the battle. The Eternal Dominion is still operational, but showing significant damage. And the quantum shields. Susan's voice was proud. They're at 180% efficiency, Captain. The more they shoot at us, the stronger we get. Wilson looked at the tactical display. The mighty Council fleet was scattered, their perfect formations broken, their rigid tactics useless in the asteroid field. They had expected an inferior enemy to fight by their rules. Instead, they got humanity at its most creative and dangerous. Take us in again, she ordered. Let's show them what else those old submarine tactics can do. The Thunderchild powered up, ready for another attack. Sometimes, Wilson thought, the best way to make history was to learn from it. Science Officer Daniel Foster stared at his readings in disbelief. Captain, he called out, his voice urgent. I think I've found something big. The bridge of the Thunderchild was dim, running on low power to avoid detection. They had been playing cat and mouse with the Eternal Dominion for hours now, striking and vanishing among the asteroids. What is it? Captain Wilson asked, moving to his station. Their main power systems, Daniel pointed to his screen. They use some kind of advanced energy matrix. It's incredibly powerful, but... He paused, double-checking his findings. But it's also incredibly sensitive to electromagnetic pulses. The whole bridge crew turned to look at him. An EMP, Susan Martinez asked over the comm. Like what we used to use against electronics back home. Exactly, Daniel nodded. Their shields can stop physical attacks and energy weapons, but they've never needed to protect against something as primitive as an electromagnetic pulse. Captain Wilson's eyes narrowed. Can we generate one strong enough? Maybe, Susan said. I could overload the quantum shields, turn them into one massive EMP burst, but we'd have to get very close, and it would leave us defenseless for about 30 seconds after. The ship shook as another blast from the Eternal Dominion vaporized a nearby asteroid. The Council flagship was getting desperate, firing at anything that moved. They're breaking, Brian Murphy reported from Tactical. Look at their formation. It's completely fallen apart. No more perfect patterns. They're just shooting wildly now. Atlas spoke up. Council communications intercepted. Supreme War Master Krell is demanding explanation for battle failures. Multiple subordinate ships reporting system damage from human railgun attacks. Show me their flagship's current status, Wilson ordered. The main screen displayed the Eternal Dominion. Its once perfect black hull was now scared and pitted from railgun hits. Purple energy still pulsed through its lines, but the pattern was irregular, flickering. They're wounded, Lisa Chen observed, but they're also more dangerous now. Like a cornered animal. As if to prove her point, the flagship's main cannon fired again, the beam wider and more unstable than before. It missed the Thunderchild completely but destroyed 3 asteroids. They're losing control, Daniel said. Their power system is becoming unstable. If we hit them with an EMP now, we might overload their whole grid. Susan finished. But Captain, if we do this, we need to time it perfectly. We'll only get one shot. Wilson stood in the center of her bridge, looking at each of her crew members. They were tired, some were injured, but all of them were ready. Atlas, calculate the optimal attack vector, she ordered. Susan, how long to prepare the quantum shield overload? 5 minutes to reconfigure. But remember, we'll be completely vulnerable after we trigger it. Brian, load every rail gun we have left. If this works, we'll need to hit them hard while their systems are down. The crew moved with purpose, preparing for their final attack. On the main screen, the Eternal Dominion continued its erratic firing pattern, its weapons growing more unstable with each shot. They've never lost before, Lisa said quietly. 10,000 years of victory. And now they're falling apart, because one primitive ship wouldn't fight the way they expected. Sometimes the strongest tree is the first to fall in a storm, Wilson replied. They built their perfect system and never thought they'd need to change it. She turned to her crew. Ready. Shield overload ready, Susan reported. On your mark, Captain. Rail guns loaded, Brian added. All remaining ammunition prepped. Attack vector calculated, Atlas announced. Recommend approach through Sector 7, using larger asteroids as cover until final approach. Wilson took her seat. Take us in, Lisa. Nice and slow until we're in position. The Thunderchild glided forward, slipping between asteroids like a shark through coral. The Eternal Dominion's wild firing continued, but none of their shots came close. They still can't track us properly, Daniel reported. Their targeting systems were never designed to handle our level of maneuverability. Distance to target? Wilson asked. 2,000 meters, Lisa reported. Closing slow and steady. Their power grid is becoming more unstable, Daniel warned. If we're going to do this, it needs to be soon. Wilson watched as they closed on their massive opponent. The flagship that had terrified countless civilizations into submission was about to learn a lesson about underestimating primitive species. All hands, she broadcast shipwide. Prepare for critical maneuver. This is the moment that changes everything. The Eternal Dominion loomed before them, its weapons charging for another wild burst. But this time, the Thunderchild wasn't going to dodge. This time, they were going to break the unbreakable. 500 meters. Lisa Chen called out as the Thunderchild closed in on the Eternal Dominion. The massive Council flagship filled their entire view screen now, its scared black hull crackling with unstable purple energy. Quantum shield overload at maximum. Susan Martinez's voice was tense over the comm. When I trigger this, we'll have no defenses for 30 seconds. Captain Wilson gripped her chair. This was it. Humanity's one chance to change the galaxy forever. Everyone ready. This is going to be rough. Rail guns locked on their critical points, Brian Murphy reported from Tactical. Power systems targeted, Daniel Foster added. Their energy grid is already unstable. This should push it over the edge. The Eternal Dominion's weapons began to glow, preparing another desperate burst. But they were too close now. The massive cannons couldn't target them properly. Now, Wilson commanded. Susan triggered the quantum shield overload. The Thunderchild's shields exploded outward in a massive wave of electromagnetic energy. For a moment, space itself seemed to ripple. The effect on the Council flagship was immediate and devastating. The purple energy lines across its hull flickered and died, its weapons powered down. Internal lights went dark. Direct hit, Daniel shouted. Their whole power grid is collapsing. Fire everything, Wilson ordered. The Thunderchild's rail guns roared to life, launching their remaining ammunition. Without shields, the metal projectiles tore through the flagship's armor like paper. Secondary explosions bloomed across its hull. 20 seconds until our shields recover, Susan warned. On their comm system, they could hear panic in the Council ship's transmissions. Supreme War Master Krell's voice cut through the chaos, no longer proud but desperate. This is impossible. We are the Eternal Dominion. We cannot be defeated by primitives. 10 seconds, Susan counted down. The remaining Council ships were turning to flee, their perfect formation forgotten. The sight of their invincible flagship powerless and burning had broken their will to fight. 5 seconds. Wilson watched as more explosions rippled through the Eternal Dominion. 10,000 years of arrogance and oppression were ending at the hands of a single human ship. Shields back online, Susan reported triumphantly. Message from the Eternal Dominion, Atlas announced. They are surrendering, Captain. The bridge crew fell silent. No one had expected those words. Supreme War Master Krell's image appeared on their screen. His scales were dull, his 6 eyes downcast. How? He asked simply. How did you defeat us? Captain Wilson stood. Because you thought power was everything. You forgot that sometimes the smartest fighter beats the strongest one. You forgot how to adapt, how to think differently. That was your weakness. 10,000 years, Krell said quietly. We have ruled space for 10,000 years. And now things change, Wilson finished. The galaxy doesn't belong to just the Council anymore. Humanity has earned its place among the stars. New signals began coming in. The other Council ships were standing down. And more surprisingly, messages were arriving from dozens of conquered worlds. They had been watching the battle, seeing their oppressors' perfect fleet defeated by a single primitive ship. Captain, Daniel reported excitedly. The other subjugated species, they're rising up. The Council's control is breaking everywhere. Wilson nodded. Send a message to Earth. Tell them. She looked at her brave crew. Tell them that humanity just changed the galaxy. And we did it not by being the strongest, but by being the smartest. By refusing to give up when a bully tried to tell us we didn't belong. The bridge crew cheered. On their screens, they could see the mighty Eternal Dominion, now dark and powerless, being abandoned by its crew. The ship that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia had fallen to human ingenuity and determination. What happens now? Lisa asked quietly. Now, Wilson smiled. Now we help build a better galaxy. One where no species has to ask permission to reach for the stars. She turned to her crew. The Council thought they were unbeatable because they were the strongest. We proved that innovation, adaptability, and courage matter more than raw power. As the Thunderchild's crew began rescue operations for the surrendering Council ships, Wilson looked out at the asteroid field where they had made history. Sometimes, she thought, the greatest victories come not from having the biggest guns, but from having the brightest ideas and the bravest hearts. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and nothing would ever be the same again.